Hey, before we start the show, I'd like to give a shout out to a very special sponsor of the Code Story podcast, and that's Dev Mountain. Dev Mountain is one of the highest rated coding schools in the country, employing experts who are passionate about sharing their craft and empowering the next wave of programmers. Through their boot camp, they accelerate education by focusing on modern skills to align their students with the needs of the tech industry. They offer a variety of courses from web development to UX design to iOS development, and their hands-on approach enables students to launch their careers or build their startups and ultimately to achieve their goals. I can personally vouch for the quality developers they produce, having hired 6 graduates from their Dallas campus. Not only does Dev Mountain teach the practical skills needed to build software, they give their students a foundation to amplify the necessary creative thinking, problem solving, and project-focused skills required for tech professionals today. You can find out more information about their programs and how to sign up at devmountain.com. That's devmountain.com.
But my initial thought was, heck no. Another ride-hailing company? What's the point? Does Uber and Lyft have it all wrapped up, or is there any space out there? When I started hearing some of these horror stories, I at first was like, okay, that's a one-off, it's a one-off. And then I came home to my wife and I was like, this is crazy. You and I take Uber and Lyft all the time. And she goes, stop. We take Uber and Lyft all the time. I don't take it by myself. If you'll permit me, I'd love to join your team and let's make this happen.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries who share in the critical moments of what it takes to change an industry and build and lead a team that has your back. I'm your host, Noah Laphart, and today how Jonathan Campos saw the opportunity to create and build the next big thing in ride sharing. All this and more on Code Story. After getting his master's, Jonathan Campos found himself working with clients, listening to their pain points and creating software to meet those needs. He worked his way through a handful of startups and agencies before landing at Bottle Rocket as the chief architect, growing their web and backend practice. Not too long after, a former boss reached out about an opportunity to uplevel the ride-sharing experience, focusing on simple billing, safety, consistency, and control over the experience. This opportunity was to become the CTO of Alto. Tell me your career path up to this point.
Started in high school doing some development. In college, I started as a CS major at UTD, and I actually found CS to be quite boring. Just wasn't scratching the itch that I was hoping for. So I switched over to actually arts and humanities and was one of the very first people in a program that eventually became the ATech program at UT Dallas. And so with that, it was kind of mixing like the art and the communication side of development with the technology. So shot through school, again, just couldn't get my hands off of working hard. So that ended up only lasting about 3 years. And then I lost a bet to my older sister and I wasn't able to find a job right out of college. So I went and got my master's. When I came back to Dallas, and I got my first job in a small marketing company. And as we were working with these clients and trying to help them on their marketing plans, the developer in me just kind of kept listening to their problems. And eventually, I convinced my boss, and we started actually building, at the time, what I would consider semi-basic software for these clients. A lot of what's out there right now on the cloud wasn't out there back in 2005, 2006. What a lot of these customers needed was not a new marketing plan, but a centralized way to deal with like contacts and basic CRM programs that are more customized to their business. And so I started getting right back in development, and at the time I was doing a lot of like PHP, MySQL, and very early Flash too. from there, I got stolen away to a startup in the Frisco area called Nextplore, where the idea was that we were going to start building basically what would be an equivalent to like a Google apps, like Google Docs, Google Sheets, the whole nine yards, along with a search engine. But the company just never materialized the way we wanted. I then moved to Stream Energy, where I was really focused on front-end development with that team and doing a lot with like Flash and Flex. Then quickly got stolen away from there and became a consultant. And I was a consultant for a good 10, 12 years with a company called Percosti here in Dallas. And my focus started off on the front-end technology. So again, Flash, Flex, HTML. And then the last few years, I worked at Bottle Rocket Studios, who, if you're from Dallas, they're a premier mobile development shop, and there I was the chief architect and really kind of helping lead and grow some of the technology. They're really amazing when it comes to mobile technology, but they're still growing up when it comes to web and backend. So I was there for about a year and a half, helping them with that. And then, lo and behold, you keep good relationships with your old bosses. And my old boss, through a friend of a friend, started talking to Will Coleman and Alex from Alto, and they said, hey, if you need a CTO, there's only one person you need to talk to. So they gave me a call, and that led to Alto.
This episode is sponsored by Vanta. You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. And obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors. But they take time and energy pulling you away from building and shipping. And that's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups like yours get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. How, you ask? Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. And the platform connects you with trusted vCISOs to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. Join over 8,000 companies, including many Y Combinator and Techstars startups who trust Vanta. Simplify compliance and get $1,000 off at vanta.com/codestory. That's VANTA.com/codestory.
Tell me about that process, that phone call. How did that go when they reached out to you?
When they first called me and they said, hey, we've got this ride-hailing company in Dallas that we're kicking off. We're still extremely early on. You'd basically be like employee number 3 or 4. Are you interested? And I took this call initially because, a previous boss made the connection, so a friend of a friend. But my initial thought was, heck no. Another ride-hailing company, Uber and Lyft, there's rush you. There's what's the point? But then I started reaching out to some friends, and Will sat me down, and Alex, and we kind of went through all that they were doing, and the experience was amazing, what they're trying to put together. And the plans that they had, it was like everything was buttoned up, and like, again, some of the smartest people you've seen and some of the best laid plans. And it was just like, okay, obviously you're onto something, you're intelligent, this isn't crazy. I've got to go find out and do my own, small market research. So I reached out to some people that I trust. One of my buddies at TechCrunch, I reached out to him and I said, hey, there's this ride-hailing company in Dallas. Like, okay, tell me honestly, like, does Uber and Lyft have it all wrapped up, or, is there any space out there? He immediately was like, no, Uber and Lyft do not have this wrapped up. Like, ride-hailing is actually still like on the grow and changing. They have zero loyalty. They've got some very serious problems. It's really, if you can get that right edge of a loyal customer that's not going to go jump between apps, on a drop of a hat, you actually may have a winning combination there of how to grow. And I was like, okay, so there may be a market, there may be ability not to get crushed. This is interesting. And one other thing that is really big for Alto is safety. And specifically, they really like focusing on women passengers and improving the experience, because, as two guys on this call, it's hard to sympathize properly with the experience that women have when it comes to Uber and Lyft and other traditional TNCs. when I started hearing some of these horror stories, I at first was like, okay, that's a one-off, it's a one-off. And then I came home to my wife and I was like, this is crazy. I'm hearing all these stories, like, there's no way this is true. You and I take Uber and Lyft all the time. And she goes, stop. No. We take Uber and Lyft all the time. I don't take it by myself. And then she says, I don't even like it when you get out of the car too fast if I'm still in the car, because I'm afraid they're going to take off with me still in the car. Something as simple as that, you're like, whoa, I didn't realize it's like a day-to-day, concern. And, as I keep talking, it was just like, and to her and to others, it was just, wow, there's a very real, visceral, like, fear. Okay, there's definitely something there. And at that point, I called Will up and I was like, you've got something. And, if you'll permit me, I'd love to join your team, and let's make this happen. And that was it. We got moving from there.
You did your research, you saw the problem and the need, you even felt it in certain close, intimate circles with your wife, speaking to you that way. And so you jumped on board, employee number 3 or 4, like you mentioned. When you started in, was there any technology pre-built, or did you jump in ground zero and start creating something?
So there was some pre-built. We've been working with, or at the time they'd been working with a company called Frog Design based in Austin. Frog was helping them get the MVP out the door. We had they had a very short timeline. They had made some technology decisions already, and all of these decisions were around how to get an MVP out the door, and we could start be able to actually get real feedback from customers. I came in, and of course the first thing I did a technology audit, figure out what decisions have been made, have my own personal stamp of approval or on some of these things, and start determining where are we going to go. And once we kicked off and got going, it was immediately apparent that our growth trajectory was going to outgrow the MVP within months. So we went from something that you hope an MVP lasts year and a half, maybe 2 years. Yeah, and at this point it was within months. This all has to switch out. It is not at the scale necessary for the growth that we're seeing. So immediately I ramped up a team and we got to developing.
The trade-off obviously in the beginning is you accepted probably a quicker solution that ended up not being suited for your growth trajectory. What was the tech used for the MVP, and then what tech did you start to change over to support your growth?
These decisions that were made, I'm not faulting anyone if they've made decisions similar. I can tell you just through my years of technology that I get it. People make decisions in in the moment that they're in. Not everything's perfect, and so if you've anyone listening, if you've made some of these decisions, like that very well may be perfect for your use case, but for us and the growth that was coming, it just wasn't going to work. So what they set up is they put together a Node.js server that was running on AWS. It was one big monolithic application running with GraphQL and Prisma to handle real-time communications with various applications and the database. And it makes it nice. And if you know GraphQL, you know that it's nice because you can be a little bit more flexible about your service calls as you're setting things up. If you know Prisma, it's kind of one of those like out of the box, able to do a lot for you and do a lot of the heavy lifting of the communications back and forth. It doesn't scale well, and there are bugs. There's, even if you look in the official documentation, there's places where they say do not use these products in production. There's serious problems. Yeah, I mean, one of them was a really horrible memory leak that we were dealing with for months. And in their GitHub repo, where you actually see them going through and talking about it, like, yeah, we're focusing on this, but it's a problem. Don't use this in production. And so of course, that's not something you know immediately. That's something you start learning once you start getting load in the system, and you start seeing like, wow, this is an issue. We worked with the MVP, and we're still working with it, and transitioning off of the MVP. But where we're going is totally built on Kubernetes with Istio and Knative and a lot of other cool buzzwords that you've heard, I'm sure, a million times already. We are kind of switching over so that way we're actually going to use Google servers and use Firebase for a lot of those real-time database communications. And this is really going to help because switching from a monolithic application structure to a microservices application structure, it just makes us a lot more nimble and able to make changes on the fly, where rather than having to wait till after midnight, 1-2 o'clock in the morning when customers are off the platform, we can start doing middle of the day hot switches, because we're now changing small incremental pieces as opposed to the entire application.
This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. Between juggling client meetings, managing your website, and keeping up with everyday tasks, who has the time to stress out about website security? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of, so you can focus on what you do best. Kinsta provides managed hosting for WordPress, offering lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Kinsta provides enterprise-grade security, being one of the few hosting providers for WordPress with SOC 2 and other certifications, guaranteeing the highest level of security for your website. Thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition for you from other hosting providers. Customers have reported 200% faster load times post-migration to their platform. What I find cool about Kinsta is their fast and reliable customer service and premium features that are included at no extra cost. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. That's KINSTA.com.
How did you go about the process of building, or how do you go about the process of building your product roadmap? So we talked about the internals, the tech part of it, but how do you go about prioritizing not only internal changes, but the product changes themselves?
So this is actually a place that I'm very proud, and I feel that our executive team does a good job. So as a startup and any new company, heck, probably any company period, there are a million things that you can work on, and almost any one of them gives you some level of positive return. So with that, we've got this laundry list that we can work on for the next few years of all this wonderful things. But how do you start prioritizing and determining which one is going to give you the biggest bang for your buck, and which one is going to be right for our current timeline? Obviously, we can't be building something that only will be good a year from now. We have to also build stuff that's going to be helpful, the next week. What we do is we actually sit down with, some of our highest priority items. We listen to what our customers are saying and what their pain points are. We listen to what our drivers are saying, because our drivers are, some of our most important customers, and we hear what their pain points are. And honestly, we put them up on a board. And once we start narrowing it down to, let's say, the top, even 30, narrow it down on a 2x2 board that we make a matrix of impact to our customers and the level of effort it would take to actually complete these tasks. So when you actually look at those two scales, you're able to determine, okay, this one is low impact, but really hard to work on. Okay, maybe we don't focus on that. This one over here, though, this other task is really high impact, but very low effort. Well, that sounds like an easy win to me. So once we start laying things out, we start determining which one's more important, which ones are easier, which ones are harder. You see it up on the board, and you're really able to start seeing clustering of priorities. And then with that, you're able to just slice off certain areas and say, okay, this is going to be highest priority, and the stuff we're going to focus on in this next quarter, versus these other pieces, which may be disregarded or pushed back until their priority changes.
So it sounds really mathematical and clean, and it makes a lot of sense to do it that way. Do you ever find yourself or the team taking those high impact, high magnitude of work items and breaking them down into short-term and long-term pieces?
Yes, definitely, especially when they're, some of these pieces are very big. And so we start determining, how can we focus on certain pieces or what is the MVP version of this story versus, the entire piece? Because if we always do, the biggest possible work item, then, we'll never get anything out to our customers. And a lot of times, even getting that 20% of the feature out will impact and improve 80% of your customers' usage. So start really breaking down individual pieces and figure out what's the MVP of this feature, or do we have to have the whole thing to make the full impact?
Let's take a step back and probably into something that you're continuously doing as the CTO, but tell me how did you build your team? How did you select the winning horses to really drive the development of what you're doing at Alto?
This first team is just an amazing group of people. So immediately, just because of the teams I've worked on before, I knew roughly what the structure needed to be. I needed 2 or 3 backend folks, 2 or 3 front-end folks, someone that would be a good project manager, someone that would be a good system reliability engineer, someone that would be a QA, and then someone that would focus on the product itself, both in terms of the design and the user experience, which are very different things. You kind of put all those together, and that's the list of people you need. However, that's more requirements than I actually had open slots for. So a few people we had to double up on, but I immediately started reaching out to some people that I've worked with previously. So 2 or 3 of them were people that I worked with before, and I knew that their temperament and their drive to learn and grow and try new things was exactly what we were looking for. And then others, I just started fishing out there. So I knew from the beginning that I wanted to make a team that was representative of our customer base. So being that at least half of our customers are women and half of them are men, I really want to focus on, I can very proudly say we have a very diverse team that includes both women coders and men coders. And then with that, just making sure to keep a good culture that will keep growing this team, because once I started getting the first 2 or 3, those people would start evangelizing for us and talking to other people they knew. And it became more of a word of mouth campaign than anything else. So in the end, I was able to bring the team up to about 12 individuals. And again, it's a great team. We focus on getting work product out, not how often your butt is sitting in a chair. We really focus on trying to do something new and learn and grow, while also making sure to get a good high quality product out.
Is your structure of the team pretty flat, or do you have managers underneath you that are managing groups of folks or leads? How did you go about structuring that?
It is fairly flat. I do try not to have too many levels. However, I do know that we've got different experience levels within our team. So right now, the way I set it up is the fact there'd be 2 juniors for every 1 senior developer. This is really something that's important, so that way these junior developers can have someone to mentor them, someone to answer those questions and help them grow. If you have all juniors, it's really hard, because then of course they're still learning and cutting their teeth on problems that a lot of us have solved already. But on the other hand, if you just have all seniors, yeah, that's wonderful, but it's a high-priced team that's hard to keep up with, and then also hard to keep them encouraged. By having this mix, it made it where I was able to go out and find very senior developers that really had that love of coding, that really loved teaching others. And so they, my senior developers, they right from the beginning, they said they want the ability to teach and to mentor. And so they were able to scratch that itch with us while improving, people that were still just starting out their career in development. Yeah, that was kind of my initial plan. So right there, one senior front end, one senior back end, and then 2 junior front end, 2 junior back end. The rest of the team is kind of individual contributors, including project managers, designer, QA, etc.
So it sounds like not only is the team culture important across the company, but you've set up your tech team culture for where there are opportunities for mentorship, for growth, for pass down of senior knowledge, things like that. Is that right?
Before even coming into Alto, I can tell you that I sat down with Will and I said, okay, well, if I come in, there's certain requirements I have. As a developer, I know that what us developers want is we want something that challenges us. We want to be able to grow. We don't want to get stagnant. And so I told him, we need to have, I can't come in unless we have a guarantee of a certain amount of budget specifically for, learning and growth and conferences. And Will was extremely positive with that. He said, I love it. I love the idea of people, getting better and wanting to stay and being challenged. So let's do it. So that was an easy decision to make. And so with that, we do a lot of internal training. We're not great at doing it every week just because, we forget from one week to the other, but we're usually pretty good about doing lunch and learns. We have the team do, pair programming. We have a lot of code reviews. We have certain levels of expectations that we expect, but all of this is meant to be a growing and learning environment. I can tell you that, this last week or two, we started getting some new areas of code, and it was great to watch some of my front-end developers come up and they said, hey, there's this online course, it costs this much, I want to do it. And I didn't even blink an eye. Here you go. Here's the credit card. Let's make this happen. And within a day, they came back and they're like, I've learned so much. I'm ready to go. Some of these things don't have to be huge, long, multi-month training. It can be just focused on one little piece. But just that kind of environment helps people know that the company, the best for them. And so in turn, they want the best for the company.
Tell me about a mistake that you made throughout your process at Alto. Either a leadership mistake or a tech mistake. What did you do about it?
One mistake that I've made is we were initially trying to really rush to get one key position filled. Because of that, we kind of scrimped on some of the best laid plans that we'd put out. We had said that we always want every one of our candidates to go through these stages. And we kind of scrimped on that just because, we felt this was the right person and we really wanted this position filled. And so we kind of rushed. And when they came in, it was pretty immediate that we knew that we'd made the wrong choice with this candidate and that it wasn't going to work. Really tried hard, and for a good couple months, we really tried working with the candidate and making sure that to see if we could recover this. And it was a mismatch in skill sets and expectations. And it stinks when that happens. You never like being in the situation. You never like seeing anyone else in the situation. It was really painful and disheartening for the executive team that we made this decision and things were going this way. So sadly, it was best that we sat down, we had many conversations, and we just chose to part ways. It reminded us whenever this was all over that the old saying is very true, to hire slow and be very sure of what you're getting yourself into. Fire fast. If you know things aren't going to work out, just be very open, honest, and communicate that issue.
Whenever your team did decide to part ways with the candidate, what was the impact on your team after the fact? Was it positive, negative, neutral? What are your thoughts there?
This was the first person from my team that we had to let go. And so I wanted to make sure that it went as positively as possible. It's always, I feel that it's kind of scary when someone gets let go within a group, especially, a group of only 12 people. These people knew this person, and they knew who they were. They knew their family to some degree. You want to make sure that people know that this was not a decision made lightly. The person did not walk in one day and we just decide, hey, that's it, it's over. And so I made sure to sit everyone down and let them know that these are the steps that we took as a company. These are the many communication points that we had. This was not a decision that was made lightly, and I wanted everyone to know that if it comes down to it, we will work as hard for you and make sure that we can try to salvage the situation, adjust job descriptions as necessary, just do whatever we can to make this work, because we want a good working relationship. In the end, I think it ended up really positive. It let people know that we do care, and just sometimes we have to make those hard decisions.
I've been in that seat, and it's not an easy one. And the team does benefit from it in many ways. Can you speak to some of the things that y'all are doing in the cars themselves about the experience and some of the IoT stuff that y'all have introduced?
We do have monitors in the car for all of our drivers. These include a camera that is plain to see. With this, we track every one of our drivers. We ensure that that if there's any kind of harsh braking events, if there's any kind of distracted driving, that's something that we actually respond to immediately. All of our drivers know this. We actually train around this this technology, and we ensure that we ensure that using technology that we can give customers the best experience. We actually go onto the second half where for our customers, we actually make it where they can actually control the car in ways that other competitors can't do. Because we own the car and we can actually put specific technology in the car, we're able to do things like give customers control of the radio in a much more seamless fashion than possible. There are a few other ride-hailing companies out there that allow you to request to have certain radio stations playing or something to that effect. But ultimately what it does is it comes down to the driver reading a request on a screen and choosing to actually execute that request or not. Or even worse, you're in the car, the driver is focused on driving you safely to your next destination, and you're asking them, hey, can you change your radio station? Can you plug in my phone? Can you set the Bluetooth up? Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do that? And it's a horrible experience, as opposed for us, where because we own the cars and because we've got this tight integration of technology, you can actually control the radio, control the volume, control the lighting, and all sorts of stuff within the car directly from your phone. So it sounds like a small change compared to requesting it from the driver until you're in the car. You're sitting there and you decide, I'm going to change this music. No talking necessary, no explanation, no back and forth. You just make the change. Magically, the radio station changes over. And there's something just very satisfying to that. It just becomes a very magical, positive moment and experience where you realize this could be better than what's out there.
Okay, Jonathan, name an architect or CTO or tech person that you look up to. Tell me why. Or if it's a non-tech person, who do you look up to?
A lot of the people I look up to, I try not to be very grandiose about people that you see out there that are more public figures, because you don't know how they actually are and they work. But I've been very fortunate over the years to work closely with some really amazing, intelligent folks. Within the community, I can tell you that a gentleman in Chicago named Mike Labriola that runs Digital Primates, which he is an amazing architect and one of the smartest people I've ever met. Within Dallas, there's Carter Bradford, who again is just one of the smartest cloud architects and now runs Precocity here in Dallas. I was very fortunate for a while to work with Roy Fleming, actually the person that penned his dissertation on RESTful services. hearing him talk about the open source community and how Apache came together and his goals around technology, it's amazing. You bring in a brain like that into Adobe, which Adobe is a huge technology company. I mean, within hours, he's making fundamental shifts to their technology platform, and it's just amazing to see some of these people. And one, the command they have over the technology, and two, the understanding of how to work with people and with organizations. It's awe-inspiring.
If you could go back to the beginning of Alto specifically, what would you do differently, or what would you would there be another approach you might take to a certain area?
Yeah. So if I were to go back and do it differently, I definitely would come on board a little bit earlier and make sure that we built everything using microservices right from the get-go. It adds a little bit more complexity, but man, it gives you a lot of flexibility. I could be switching out piece by piece as opposed to having to plan and build. That would be the biggest change I would make if I could go back and wave that magic wand.
If you could give some advice to someone who is getting started a few years back from where you are now, what sort of advice would you give them?
So this is advice I've given in the past, and I believe it with every bit of my being. So I'm going to say it over and over and over again until everyone hears it. I tell every new developer that's coming in to create a project that you're passionate about and to see it through from beginning to end. A lot of developers are out there and they may have done like a course at Dev Mountain. They may have just been sitting in their room reading books and plugging away at their own little personal projects and decide that development is the way to go. But I can tell you, launch something. It doesn't have to be big. Preferably keep it small because it's going to get bigger than you believe. But launch something. Really put it out there. Really work on it and love it and own it, because you learn so many different parts and pieces as you're going through. There's no single piece that you get lost in. When you start working at these big companies, you just focus on your one little area of code. You don't realize how everything works together. When you're new in development, you don't have that resume that says, you've been working on, X technology for 5 years or 10 years. And so it's really hard to prove you've got those skill sets. So the best thing you can do for yourself is to just build it on your own. Be able to come into an interview and say, yes, you're right. I don't have 10 years of experience I can point to, but look at this. Open it up for them. It doesn't have to be amazing. It doesn't have to be beautiful. Whatever your skill sets are, lean towards that. If it's, highly scalable, great. If it has this, beautiful way of dealing with data, if it's just beautiful on its own and maybe you're more of a designer, just build something and get it out there. Work on every little piece so that way you can talk about it, and you will be so much further than you believe. There's a lot of people out there that don't sit and really learn and spend those 10,000 hours on something, and because of that, you will be surprised how much further you are along than any of your peers, because you spent that time and really loved and grew your own piece of development art.
That is solid advice. Solid advice. Well, Jonathan, I really appreciate you being on the Code Story podcast. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is a production of TouchTap LLC and is hosted and produced by Noah Laupart, co-produced and edited by George Macharko. Special thanks to Deanna Chapman and Stephanie Campisi for their promotional support. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Breaker, or the podcasting app of your choice. Make sure to check us out at codestory.co or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn.